listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the NFL Draft odds analysis and preview for Friday, April 3rd, 2020. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
All right, folks, racing towards the NFL Draft, hopefully racing back towards sports in general. Brian Blessing and Bruce Marshall from the legendary publication, The Gold Sheet. And just an update for you. We're in Las Vegas. And, Bruce, let's cut to the chase. We're still in a holding pattern on many, 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 many fronts, waiting to see what goes on all around the country. If everybody can't get on the same page in terms of what needs to be done on the big picture, the fun entertainment for us on the backside of this remains very much up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing things canceled 3-4 months out now. And so now we're into things from July and into August that are being canceled. And so we're coming up on that point with the NFL's going to have to start. I'm sure they're thinking about it, even though they're not talking much publicly about it. But for now, the draft keeps going. They won't make any decisions for a while. They're still gung-ho with the draft, so that's good for all of us. Gives us something extra to talk about. We're only 3 weeks away from all that. And then, we'll see. But it's obviously fluid. The NFL, the only break in sports in this whole thing was that it all happened right after the NFL season concluded. And so as of yet, football hasn't had to do it. College football is going to be in the same boat here, too. So we'll just have to wait and see. But for now, the NFL's putting on a pretty brave front that this thing will all be cleared up in the late summer, fall, and we can just cross our fingers. They haven't made any official moves. They won't do that for a while. So right now, we'll just see how the draft goes and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the draft's going to be a real wonderful diversion for us. Let's just cut to a dose of reality here. On many topics, and I know on my radio shows in Las Vegas, we were dealing with this. And it's funny, things that just pop in your head, things you should think. And the other day, for example, had Darren Dreger on, who's really well connected all around the league circles. And we're just in the point of conversation, this it pops in my head. And not a lot of people have really been talking about that. I'm sure others were, but it was okay. You're back and no fans, and you get sports back up and running, but there's a real dynamic in play. Okay, you're back, and let's do the playoffs. And all of a sudden, in game 3 of the first round, a player on a team tests positive. My God, I mean, what do you do? I mean, is the team eliminated? The other team they have been playing against has been exposed. It's the great unknown. Segue back to the NFL. Earlier in the week, the league's legal general counsel, Jeff Pash, said on a conference call that the expectation was the regular season would begin as scheduled in September. And this is almost maybe a microcosm of the stuff we're seeing every day. But now a league doctor, is Dr. Sills, bottom line, he says, as long as we're still in a place where when a single individual tests positive for the virus, that you have to quarantine every single person who was in contact with them in any way, shape, form, or fashion, then I don't think you can begin to think about reopening a team sport because we're going to have positive cases for a very, very long time. So, basically the same premise of what we were saying with the hockey game is like, oh, my God, a guy tested positive. The whole thing comes off the train tracks, and that's kind of the reality of the whole situation.
Yeah, regrettably so. I mean, a possible game changer if they get some effective treatments for this stuff. They're not going to have a vaccine for a while. But if that would be alter the dynamic sun. If you do get it, then you treat it and you go out like an injury. But that still doesn't necessarily stop the spread. This is going to be a bigger question for society to answer. If you're not going to get back to normal until every one of these things, until nobody's getting it again, then you're going to have to at some point figure out how you can get this thing back up and moving, even though realizing some of this, you're going to have stray cases. And it could be another, this is how the pandemics always work. They come back in a lesser form later on. Are we going to shut this thing down every time somebody gets it? The other thing is people, the legal questions about it. And you're going to have disclaimers for even if things are gradually lifted. If somebody does get it, are they going to sue? If this is the thing with the fans, what if they have crowds back and there are a couple people who get it, and then do they sue the NFL or whatever? There's all sorts of like that too that they've got to worry about. So I don't know what the answer is, but there are some answers that are not so good out there for us.
No, again, I mean, we want to be talking numbers and football, and we'll do a little of that here. But I mean, and then we're just giving a weekly update now, and just on this update, the thing I would say, even this topic at the moment is kind of, and boy, Bruce, I'm calling on you here. I'm not turning you into Mahatma Gandhi here, but it's almost a microcosm of what we're seeing every day. Okay, do the leaders know what to do? How should this be applied? Does everybody get on board with it? And then when you try to see light at the end of the tunnel and, okay, we've got to find a way to get life as normal, but then everybody gets pressured to follow the lead of medical, quote unquote, experts. And I'm not knocking any one of them, but these people didn't have very many answers when this thing started. Now we're knee deep in this thing. Yet we're following their lead as if they know everything that's going on. And the clear thing is, I don't think anybody knows exactly how this plays out. And then the big picture is, at what point do you blend your way back into, forget sports, society? So it's almost like any walk of life. People in a business, if you're in a certain department or whatever, and something makes complete sense, but somebody in the department is fighting you over something because they're justifying their existence. We're getting tugged and pulled in so many directions. The first thing is, God bless, you want everybody healthy and safe, but to find a way that this really completely shuts down, other than, as you said, a treatment and a vaccine. We're all kind of spinning our wheels in the mud, I think.
Yeah, and sport is going to have to follow society here. It can't go off by itself, and the conversation will start to change some when there's a pivot to the destruction that shutting everything down will do societally, and the physical toll therein too. What happens when people go bankrupt? What happens when people lose all their money, when they lose their jobs? There are physical consequences of that too, and that pivot will start at some point and say, "Look what we're doing. We're creating a huge problem. We're back to that thing. The cure is worse than the problem." But that's not. I mean, that's a real question. And until we get to that point, that will change the focus somewhat, but there's people pulling in different directions, and I dare say there's some people that don't mind this thing going on for a long time, and I won't get into that too much.
Oh, no, I know. And the crazy thing is, for the topic that we are, hoping for many, many years to come, as we gather and do these things and we give great information out and have some fun doing it. The back end of this thing, I'll give you two words that probably aren't even in the vocabulary or the vernacular today, because people are going to be starved for this, and they're going to be all excited and jacked, and boy, it's going to come back and it's going to be this great thing. But what nobody's kicking the tires on when we talk about handle on a game and what people do with their routines. Here's two words for you, Bruce, that are just an afterthought at the moment: discretionary income.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then, you and I live in a place where discretionary income fuels the major economy in the state, and that's tourism in Las Vegas and the casinos. That's all about discretionary income. People coming in here now. People going to come to Las Vegas again? Therefore, some of those people bet on the football games. The football market betting is all around the country and all around the world, but that is at the top of the discretionary income pyramid. So, or right near the top. So it's something else. That's another angle to be thrown in here. And, the other thing too is just another thought here, but we're 51 years beyond the Hong Kong flu, and there have been, which was quite quite a bad deal if people want to read about how many the casualties in the Hong Kong flu, which was in our lifetime. But there are still strains of that going on now. And it's been treatable for a long time. But I mean, there are still some strains that keep occurring. The Black Plague in the late 1300s. I mean, there were strains of that continued to appear less and less lethal, but they continued to appear for over 500 years. So, this thing will, might not be completely eradicated, but it'll come back in a form that can be dealt with. So that's another thing to think about. We'll see.
We love our producer, Mike, and hey, we focus on the numbers and be up to. I mean, we're not trying to be downers here. We're just, but it's the fact of the situation that anything we're talking about, and there's draft numbers, the regular season win totals, and all these things are starting to pop up. But I would say this: the NBA, the NHL, they're still in that mindset that they can complete last year. College football, I think, is in peril. But the crazy thing is, let's cut to the chase. The NFL is the 800-pound gorilla. Yeah. And as of today, with stiff upper lip, and we're going forward. First week of September, we're back on the beam. The reality of it is, for them, football's a cold weather sport. They can start fresh, and if they had to move it back a month or two, and we got back to normalcy, the NFL is not going to pay as big a price as the other sports, but they are also kind of the leaders in this whole thing. And Bruce, if word ever started to trickle out, the NFL is considering moving their start time back to October or November. I mean, the other sports just sit there and it completely goes off the tracks because the NFL's sitting there with the luxury of time to a degree, but the sand's coming out of the hourglass. Yeah, and that might be something that they do. The plus is here that, I mean, this will, and everything else, but sports in particular, I mean, they want to get back to work. Everybody wants this stuff to start again. There's a small minority of people who are going to be saying, no, you can't do it. But I mean, as long as it's possible to get done, football people, sports people want to get back to business if they can. And I guess that speaks for everybody in every aspect. But sports certainly would like to do that. And a lot of people want to see sports get back to that. But the delay thing is very possible. And, if the NFL at some point wants to push, I don't know at what point they would say October is okay and September isn't. But we'll see about the calendar. It would be easier, I think, for the NFL to do that than college football. First of all, college football, they've got to get back to school. They got to get back to class, who knows what school is anymore? Who knows what school? Yeah, there's nobody in school right now either. So, we'll see. But it looks like the time frame on this stuff, everybody's starting to think 3-4 months in advance, which I think is pretty excessive. But we're getting to the point where on April now, 4 months from now, you're in the start of August. And that's the start of NFL preseason. That's the thing I'm a little bit worried about, too, is that they might just decide to do away with preseason or maybe down to one game or something like that. I love NFL preseason. I think it's the greatest betting thing in the world, and there's so many people hate it, and I can't understand it. But I am a little worried that might be a casualty of this stuff. But in the big picture, if they get back to playing the real stuff in the fall, that would be an okay trade. Honestly, we could go on and on here. We'll do a little draft talk, but the college football thing, basically with every day, I guess it was last night, I saw something. I mean, I've got my granddaughter. I mean, she's doing homeschool, for an hour a day. The reality is nothing official yet, but she's a fifth grader. Think of high school kids getting ready to go to college. Their school year is just gone. They're trying to figure out how do you grade, give kids a grade. For elementary kids, it's not the end of the world, but kids that want to get into college. But you're seeing now, colleges are actually considering, because they don't even know how they'll teach these classes where, some students are, saying, hey, I'm not getting anywhere near out of it online what I'm getting when I'm, in a classroom with a teacher, a professor, whatever, to the point where they're talking about adapting all grades to pass-fail instead of a 3.7. I mean, they don't even know how they're going to teach.
Oh, yeah.
And what classes are going to be. How can you possibly sit there and talk about a college football program? And, TV deals are wonderful and there's money, but so much of that is built around gate receipts and things of that nature. And college sports, to me, is the one that's really up in the air.
Well, yeah. I mean, as an institution across the board, not just sports, but universities, I think, really might not come out of this well. And there's going to be a lot of people realizing what it actually is that they're paying for. Some schools now aren't giving refunds for this semester. I was just watching
brutal.
that on TV. It is brutal, but they're going to be. You talk about an institution that could really be irreparably harmed now, and it's the whole university thing here. It's working. It's classes online. The exorbitant costs associated with colleges now. They're going to take a major, and sports will be. Is along for the ride there. But as far as sports goes and the big rights fees and all of that, there could be an enormous change there just in that narrow lane of college sports, because so much of this is TV money for them. And that's if they don't play. I mean, you already saw it after March Madness in the NC2A tournament. Because the NC2A had some event disaster insurance, they were able to recoup through insurance money about 30 to 35% of the NC2A March Madness income to distribute. But that's a lot less than they normally did. And then you look at the fall and beyond, what could happen as well. So, yeah, college sports, they are in a more precarious spot than the NFL, which will come back in its same form at some point. College sports, I'm not sure.
And honestly, you look down the road in the NFL, very stringent, and okay, they finally, how many years that's been going around now, where you can sign technically underclassmen, but I would throw a guy at you like Tremaine Edmonds with the Bills, who just by, the way the calendar fell, was a first-round pick as a 19-year-old after 2 years at Virginia Tech. He's only 21 now, has 2 years under his belt, as the guy that's leading the defense on the field, calling the signals, a teenager basically, for a team that's been in the top 2 or 3 of the defense the past couple of years. The kid's 21, entering his third year. When his first contract's up, I mean, he may be an all-pro this year, and he's only 21, to the point where whatever the playing field is for college football, all of a sudden you may see the draft have an impact where all of a sudden it's just how old you are, not how many years of college football you played.
Yeah, that's possible too. Now they've got. I'm not sure if any the new CBA that they just did, the draft stuff gets addressed in there, and I don't know that there's any changes in the provisions of that. But it could. That's something that could always alter.
Oh, that's a down the road thing. But
yeah, right. And this CBA might, I think, goes to the end of the decade here, but. This is assuming things are the same with college football.
That's exactly right.
And college football could undergo a significant change here. So I think that's something. But I think the overarching thing is college football is at a little bit more risk of having its look change. The NFL is eventually going to come back and look the same. College football will eventually come back, but it might not look the same. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. Hey, buddy, with the draft coming up, it's funny. It's one of the topics I know we've had here. I keep bringing it up, and I don't know how this pans out. And again, I'm rooting for the kid. I mean, you don't almost ever see anybody get hurt. But all of a sudden, something we've been talking about for like 10 days, where 2 of this, 2 of that, 2 is going to move up. And so they may go up to number 1 to get the guy. And now I'm seeing after the love affair thing, I just saw an article, I don't know if it was ESPN or something, is Tua worth the risk? I've been saying this for 2 weeks. I mean, he says the hip's fine. He could play today. He's saying all the right things. Of course he's got to say that. But you can't get your meat hooks on people. You can't even, give a guy a physical in person. That the Tua thing on draft day, I still think is really interesting to the point where, hey, he may go first overall, but it would not shock me, Bruce, if he's going down the sliding board as the first round goes on. Again, like I said, I'm not wishing ill will on the kid. I just can see some general managers saying, "Boy, I love it, but man, is it worth it?"
Yeah, I mean, at this time, yeah, there's always surprises here with quarterbacks, and it's unseen sometimes before the draft how it's going to go. I mean, nobody thought last year that Daniel Jones was going to go as high as he did in the first round of there, and didn't it sort of change the whole dynamic of the first round? Drew Lock fell in the second round. That's why, to Jordan Love in particular out of Utah State, I've seen this before, and those guys start to slide. What would change, though, if it is a team or two that really still thinks Tua is the guy, and I think there's probably several, though, that seem to think like that. Nick Saban apparently has given Tua his blessing from what I can tell. He said, no, he's fine, and he's told Saban has a real pipeline into the NFL. But, I mean, Tua did get hurt last year. He got hurt some the year before. He's been hurt both of his 2 years at Alabama there. So, yeah, there are some durability questions about him. So that could spook some teams out. He seems to be the focus, though, of a lot of the trade talk at the top of the first round, with Miami sitting there at 5. A lot of the mock drafts you see now are assuming Miami's going to trade up from 5 just to make sure they get him.
Well, even the Bengals' top pick now is that the thing is the disinformation with the draft every year. There's a lot of smoke screening.
Sure.
But okay, arguably the Bengals will entertain phone calls. If there's some reticence about Burrow not wanting to be in Cincinnati or whatever it turns out to be. But for argument's sake, the Bengals just say, no, we're taking this kid. But, I mean, you look at number 2, Washington just took a quarterback last year, and then you got the Chase Young kid that's likely going there, and Detroit has Matt Stafford. So, and then like you said, where Miami and San Diego, I did it. See, football's back. I did it. The Chargers, where they sit, something really wild can happen anywhere from 1, 2, and 3, but 2 and 3 specifically, where these guys are either, they're looking for, Detroit could take a tackle, a cornerback, or whatever. The Redskins, there's the defensive end, there's the Simmons kid. The Washington and Detroit are likely where someone's going to give up the farm to go up there and do something if that's their mindset.
Yeah, and the Redskins in particular are going to be hearing a lot, and Detroit will too, assuming if the Redskins are dead set on Chase Young, and that's what we seem to be hearing, although, again, that could change. I mean, there's some talk that maybe Rivera didn't think Haskins was all that much. That was early on. I haven't heard that lately, and that maybe the Skins would look at a quarterback there too.
I was just going to say, do you think they're ruined the day? I mean, who knows? I mean, hindsight's 20/20, and Daniel Snyder got involved, and at least last year you're going, oh, this guy, he can't help himself. Well, at least, he didn't trade and give away a boatload of assets to get Haskins last year. There was talk they were going to go way up to get him.
Yep.
So he still got him. But at the end of the day, are they sitting going, well, we got that guy, but boy, you look at what's out there now. Are they ruined the day they took Haskins?
Well, it's a different regime there now too in Washington. So it's not the same staff, and the front office has been changed as well. So it's not the same brain trust there in Washington. So they may not have the same commitment to Haskins. It's possible. We haven't heard too much of that yet, but again, we don't hear everything that's coming out. But Tua does change the course of the first round, because if somebody's trading up for him, I mean, I can't, if Miami's still sitting anywhere in the 5, 6, and by the Chargers, who pick right after Miami, they're, Herbert is out there too. And I don't expect, the thought is these 3 quarterbacks, Burrow, Tua, and Herbert will all be gone by 6. And that's the overarching thought in what order the teams pick and who's trading to get them. That's kind of to be determined. But most mocks that you see have these 3 guys going by the first 6.
And the way the draft is, time will always be the judge. And you go back a calendar year, not even a full calendar year, Bruce. And I'm not saying we can make this determination yet, But with the Giants, I mean, Dave Gettleman, they'd have had him walk a plank into the Hudson River, and what the hell was he doing? Well, today the Daniel Jones thing doesn't look that bad, does it?
No, and Jones turned out to be, show some promise there and accelerated. He jumped into the lineup a little quicker than people thought, and Eli is now retired, so it's his gig, and they're feeling like they've got their quarterback now. So in that case, maybe it worked. We'll see. So. But the quarterbacks, there's a lot of them, though, that don't work. And again, I point out last year, I mean, all the talk about a lot of these guys, by midseason last year, there were 3 rookie quarterbacks starting. One of them was Jones. But 2 of the other ones, Minshew for the Jaguars from Washington State was a late-round pick. Nobody was talking about him as a starter back at draft time last year. And Duck Hodges, though there were circumstances that put him into the lineup in Pittsburgh, he was a free agent out of Sam Ford. He looked good enough in preseason where they actually kept him there and they moved Joshua Dobbs along, but then he ended up starting because of the injuries by midseason. The thing is, this stuff always evolves and unravels differently each year, and we always in the fall look back and say, God, we were thinking that at the draft, and look, it's always different. So that probably holds true this draft and every draft that we can think of.
You know, I'm scrolling down the list while we could go all day. But Minnesota, okay, you got Cousins. They locked Cousins up, but they've got 2 first-round picks. It's like, I mean, and I'm not saying that they would do this, but could something squirrely like that, like a team you weren't even thinking about, that has the draft capital, a team out of nowhere, you sit there that jumps up and goes and grabs a quarterback and said, hey, here's our quarterback in the future. We've got Cousins, and whoever the guy is. He's going to, get the tutelage of a guy like Cousins. And it's almost like, Cousins is such a pinata for people who run so hot and cold on him. I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, I'm not saying they're doing it, but it could be like a team like that just upsets the whole apple cart.
Oh, sure. And it could be anybody. Listen, it could be Detroit. I mean, there's some people, I think, Stafford's contract, you got a big deal coming up here, but I mean, they might not have more than a 1 or 2 year horizon with Stafford now. So would Detroit entertain something like that? I think not, but it's possible. And the other thought one of the rumors is that Belichick's saying there now, he doesn't have a pick yet that is higher than 23 in the first round. But he could end up wheeling and dealing some. Is he really going to go in there with Stidham? This is one of the rumors that since Belichick and Saban are such good friends that Saban's told Belichick Tua is ready and he's going to be great, and Belichick might want to react on that. Maybe New England gets involved in a trade up. So anything can happen. We've seen so many of these, Brian, that nothing would really surprise us. But that's sort of the intrigue about it.
You got me laughing. You got me thinking. I mean, on the Detroit front, Matt Stafford, then there's legitimate throughout his career. I mean, when he stays upright, he's an incredible talent. But you got, David Blow and Chase Daniel behind him. At some point you're right. And I don't think teams, regularly invest enough in a backup quarterback, because it's probably a slight favorite that your quarterback could miss a game starting a season. Could Detroit totally derail the thing and sit there and go, wow, hey, we'll take Tua? Oh,
yeah. I mean, a lot of teams could and could get involved there. Pittsburgh's out of the first round now, but do they really think Mason Rudolph is the guy behind Big Ben moving forward? I mean, Big Ben, is a Big Ben question mark coming into this year off the big surgery. He's 38, 17th year in the league. This doesn't look like a long-term proposition anymore in Pittsburgh. Do they get involved in the quarterback thing too if they don't think Mason Rudolph is their guy? And I'm not sure that they do. So a lot of teams could still get involved with that. And that's, but I do think if there is movement high in the first round, Tua will be the reason there is. And he would probably be the reason there are some trades there, I think. So that's something really to look at as we move forward here.
Well, on all fronts, the British Open, months away, has been canceled The U.S. Women's Open, the USGA, it was scheduled for June 4th through the 7th in Houston. Now, they have moved this back to December. Again, talk about a moving target in all facets. It's every day, Bruce, you look at it and go, well, let's talk about it. But, boy, how do we figure this out?
I know. We've still got to live every day until then. I mean, the Kentucky Derby is supposedly going to be, Labor Day weekend now, I think. And Triple Crown in September. Now, if we get back to normal, September and October, there's going to be a lot going on. You might have the NHL wrapping up then and the NBA as well.
Wrapping up and starting.
Yeah, and then soccer. It could be a really busy fall, but right now that would be music to my ears. That means they're back to work, and that means we're back to work. So great.
Well, just hearing your voice is always music to my ears because we love talking sports. And boy, the day's going to come. We hope it comes fast. Where it's the complete focus of what we talk about are numbers and teams and games and futures and props.
Thank goodness for the NFL too, which has given us some fresh material here with the draft, the free agency and the draft. That's a good subject in normal times, and it's been an extra good subject. And it'll be good the next couple of weeks because
That's exactly right. That's exactly what we'll do. I mean, today was at least a kind of an update. Where we stand. But the next 2 weeks, we will absolutely go in great detail. I even say, Bruce, we'll do our version of a mock draft.
Sure.
Which we can talk about it in relation to numbers that are up there over under 4.5 quarterbacks in the first round, over under 6.5 wide receivers in the first round. So that's what we'll be doing in the very near future. In the meantime, Bruce, stay safe, you and your family, and always great information, our pal Bruce Marshall.
You too. Talk to you next week, Brian. Thank you.
Let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com, and reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At Betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. An approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.